What's up, y'all? It's your host, Will, coming back for a brand new episode of the HuntStand podcast. On today's episode, we're getting somebody on here that I may have fanboyed about just a little bit. I'm guilty. Guilty as charged. You know, I'll admit it. And we're going to be getting Mr. Lee Lakosky on here from The Crush. Now, I've watched Lee and Tiffany for a very long time growing up. You know, I would say that they've had a big part in my obsession with the outdoors and specifically whitetail hunting. And, you know, aside from my dad, family, friends, you know, they're one of the reasons why I wanted to get into the outdoor industry, because I saw what they were getting to do for a living and I wanted to do it myself. And so when I had the chance to do a podcast with Lee, I fanboyed, not gonna lie. And I'm very excited to get to sit down with this man and just dive into his whitetail knowledge and just get to know him and just find out how he grows these big deer year after year, and try not to fanboy too much while I podcast with them. So I'm gonna quit rambling, because I do that a lot. And so we're gonna get Lee on here to talk about everything whitetail, growing big whitetail, talking about his story, go down some rabbit holes, who knows, but we're just gonna talk deer. So we just want to thank y'all for tuning in to the HuntStand podcast, and we're gonna get right to it with Lee Lakosky from The Crush. Lee, first and foremost, man, I just want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to hop on the HuntStand podcast with us and talk hunting and life, man. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I love doing these, and especially haven't talked to you. We haven't done this yet, so I'm excited about it. Me too, man. Me too. So one of the things I like to do to get these podcasts rolling, I do it with everybody, is I like for the guest to give our listeners kind of that 30-foot tree stand view of who you are. And I know we'll dive into it even further, maybe go down a few rabbit holes, but kind of tell us, man, like how you've gotten to where you are in life. Like, give us that quick summary. Well, I guess I'd say that, you know, the time I was born, I was infatuated with hunting, and mostly deer. And where that comes from, who knows? I can remember as early as I can remember, you know, like 4 and 5 years old, just sitting at my grandparents' window up in northern Minnesota, where we hunted, and just sitting there waiting every day for my grandpa and my dad and everybody to get home to see if they'd shot anything. And then if they had, you know, just had my toy guns and BB guns and be out hunting, in my mind anyway, every day. And just, my grandpa had a big stack of Outdoor Life magazines and Sports Afield and stuff, and just looking through all those. I don't know where it came from. It wasn't like, hey, I started hunting with my dad or something. This was well before I ever started hunting. I was just infatuated with it. And, you know, so your whole life you go through, and it's, you know, of course you go through school and college and do all that stuff that you're supposed to as a chemical engineer. But still, hunting was always number one. Yeah. And, you know, we just, I started writing in college I worked at an archery shop for, I don't know, all through high school and college and stuff, and go to the ATA show and meet people there. And, I started writing for North American Whitetail and a few of the other magazines, like through college and stuff. And it never really planned on having a hunting show or anything like that. It was, you know, just, I think when you're just so infatuated with something, it'll always lead you in that direction. And it just kind of fell into our laps, and here we are. So, you know, I just think if you're that passionate about anything, it's going to lead you in that direction. Oh, so I think that's just what happened. Absolutely, man. I couldn't agree with you more on that, because I think anybody that's in the outdoor industry kind of, for the most part, I think a lot of people kind of go down that same path as they've followed that passion, whether it's shooting, archery, fishing, deer, elk, whatever it is. They followed that passion, and they're in the industry because of it. Yeah, for sure. You know, there's not many people that you meet that, I was an accountant and never hunted before, and then I just got this job at Savage or something like that. Most of them all have that interest background to begin with, and it just kind of leads them in that direction. Absolutely. Well, you kind of talked about it this a second ago, but you never dreamed of having a television show. Tell us kind of how the Crush came about, like where it started to get to where it is now. Yeah, it's a weird story, because it just kind of fell in our laps. Mm-hmm. I go back and say, I think a lot of it was through writing, and then working at Boana Archery up in
Little Canada in Minnesota for so many years. We'd go to the ATA show, and so we just met a lot of people, and like just through the ATA, when Tiffany and I would go, and we met like Don and Candy Kiske and Jay Gregory and Waddell and all those guys in Drury's. They were all kind of the same age, and just started hanging out with them, and and just through like the writing and stuff. I'd always have, I always wore Setlock and shot Matthews, and just in the photos in your articles and stuff like that. And there was no social media or anything back then, so people really kind of noticed the people that were using their products and stuff. And I never asked them for anything. I didn't know anybody there. But then when we, I think it was through Michael, and then met David Blanton, and then met Realtree, and said, hey, why don't you guys, we were always, Tiffany and I were always still hunting together and shooting good deer, for several years, long before we had farms in Iowa and everything else.
Yeah.
And we just started filming some stuff for Monster Bucks, and David Blanton was like, hey, if you guys, go out, if you can film anything, we'd love to have him on Monster Bucks. I mean, we were just so thrilled to be part of it. I mean, it wasn't for money or anything like that. So we were just, I was a chemical engineer at the time, and Tiffany was a flight attendant, so she could, take off, she'd do a long flight over to, Japan or something like that, and then she'd have the rest of the month off. And for me as an engineer, I worked, I got on the shift at that oil refinery that I worked at. And so I'd work 12-hour days, but then, it was like on to work some nights and some days, but at least every month you had a full week off. And then I could put my 2 weeks of vacation when I first started there up against that. And so I'd have 3 weeks in a row, then it'd be right around to my week off again. So, I'd have like 4 weeks off just using all my vacation through hunting time. So we'd take off around Halloween and come back, around December 1st. So we take basically the month of November off, both of us. And so we would just go film each other, and we just had a blast. And she was a flight attendant. We'd fly for free places, and, we just went around for a month hunting, and David was like, hey, start filming that. And so we did, and it was fun. We just did it for fun, and we inevitably, shot some good bucks on, even though we didn't know what the heck we were doing. They were semi in focus and pretty decent. And they used them on Monster Bucks. And then we on, with Kiske's and Drury's videos, you saw them there. And, never, like I said, there wasn't no social media or anything back then. You didn't know if anybody was watching them or anything like that. But then I just decided to quit job at the refinery. We're going to move down to Iowa just because we had bought land in Kansas and Iowa. And it's like, I just don't want to live here anymore. I mean, I want to be down in Iowa or Kansas or something.
Yeah.
And so I just quit that. And, it was just a couple of weeks after we got married on August 23rd, and October 1st, I quit and said, hey, let's move to Iowa.
Man,
and
that's
like, oh, thanks.
That's taken I kind of want to make a little segue here, but kind of like talking about that. I mean, you've gotten to where y'all are in life because you kind of took that chance on yourself, wouldn't you say?
For sure. And I think, so many people are just too afraid to. And, of course, if you get, you get into being married and kids and stuff like that, you really can't. I mean, not that you can't, but it's a lot more risky. But like for us, like at that time, and we were married, but, no kids or, no big responsibilities or anything at that time. So you could, but still most people don't do it. And I think, if you jump in the pool, either you're forced to sink or swim. And I think just not enough people do that. And so we were just, I was at that point in our life where just like, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to do something else. And I really had no idea what for sure I was going to do, but I could still keep writing. And Tiffany was still a flight attendant. So with no, kids or any major responsibilities, it's like, hey, we can certainly fend for ourselves. We both can still have jobs. It's not like we're homeless or anything.
Yeah.
So, but it was a big hit. I was making good money as an engineer. You spend 8 years in college going to get your degrees and chemical engineering degrees. All my sisters and some people thought we were crazy. You quit just to do nothing. But, I just figured we'd get through that hunting season. And, I still was in the back of my mind. My cousin was a chemical engineer at Monsanto here in Muscatine, Iowa. And then there's Cargill over in Albia. I thought, at the end of the year, I'll start, we'll go through the hunting season. And then at the end, when we get towards January, I'll start, going to interview and try to get jobs at those places. And so that was kind of our plan. So we had just been building our hunting cabin down here in Iowa. So let's just move down there and, just move our residency here and move here. And we'll figure out how we're going to make a living, after hunting season anyway. And, so Tiffany, I guess we moved down here like October 1st. I mean, I quit and we basically, boom, packed a car and moved down here. And Tiffany said right away in October, I think we hunted a day or two, but then she had her trip to Japan. And so it was like a 5-day trip. But then when she got back, she'd be off the rest of the month. And so she left. And so I just went over to Don and Candy Kiskies, and I was just helping them farming. They were harvesting. I was running the combine and the trucks and stuff for them. And I remember like it was yesterday, it was October 5th, and Aubrey Gale from ScentLok called me, and he's like, hey, we're thinking about doing another TV show. Would you guys be interested in hosting it? And I just knew Aubrey and ScentLok stuff just through like the ATA show. And, we always wore ScentLok stuff and had, did all the photos in it. And so they had, in the past, used pictures of ours like on their hang tags and stuff. So I knew those guys. And I was just like, well, the timing is perfect, Aubrey. I mean, I just quit and we moved down to Iowa. I don't really have any concrete plan. So yeah, I mean, as long as you let us do it the way that we want to, I don't want it to be a commercial for ScentLok or anything. We'd do it. And bang, there we were. We were filming that year, and still even going in, we had some kills and stuff through that year. And, we had to go to the ATA show the next year and try to get sponsors and everything. And we did that. And, and it was nice because I'd had, relationships with a lot of companies through writing and through, just meeting them at the ATA show. So it was a lot of those people were like, well, geez, he's been, pushing our products and doing photos and stuff on magazines and never asked us for anything. So yeah. And back then, when we first started, it wasn't that expensive for, a commercial on the Outdoor Channel. It's gone up quite a bit, airtime costs and everything else, but it wasn't such a huge risk back then. So, I mean, heck, one show, I think in 1 day or 2 days, we had all the spots filled and we were off to the races. And 20 years later, here we are now still doing it. So it's kind of a crazy story. Never something that we tried for or anything else. It just kind of fell in our lap.
And then you just kind of looked up and it's like, wow, here we are.
Yeah. Yeah. I still pinch myself sometimes. Like, how in the world did that happen?
Man, I don't mean to age you or me when I say this, but, I can remember 2006, 2007 watching you guys on Monster Bucks. That was when the ESPN outdoor days were over, and we're finally getting the Outdoor Channel in our house. And I can remember watching you guys since then and just watching the evolution from then to now with y'all. It's been pretty amazing and pretty awesome to watch, in fact.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I just pinch myself sometimes. Say, how in the world did that happen? Just like I said, nothing planned. Just moved down here without even a plan of what we're gonna do, and 5 days later, bang, it falls in your lap, and a year later, you're doing a show, and not knowing anything about it or anything else, and just it's pretty amazing that it all worked out the way that it did.
Man, yeah, I think it's a pretty cool story of what you guys have done, and of course, y'all aren't done yet. And so, when people look at what y'all have done and they see the show, there's a lot of work that goes into that. Kind of talk to us about what is life like behind the scenes and what all's involved in making things go round on a day-to-day basis.
Oh, it's crazy. I mean, people think, see the show and they think, oh, you just go and hunt and man, it's all fun and games. And it is. I mean, it's awesome, but it is just constant work. I mean, especially on the farm side. If it was a little bit different where, you just went to outfitters and hunted and, didn't have to do all the management and farm stuff yourself, it would be pretty you'd have a lot of time off to do things.
Yeah.
But for us, we had like 0 time off. I mean, there's no weekends off. There's no anything. I mean, especially then you throw kids into the mix and stuff, and you really, it's really hectic. I mean, trying to get everything done, because you look at like, as a farmer, it's a full-time job, and then like farm managing and all the food plots, and you got to, all chemicals and sprayers and tractors and all that stuff is like a full-time job.
Yeah.
And then, and it is, that's what farmers do. And for us, but there, you got just your corn and beans, and then harvest and plant. But for us, in between that, as soon as harvest or planting is done, now you got to think about all your food plot stuff. So you're doing all your turnip fields and rape fields and brassica fields and getting all those ready like right after. I mean, we do our clovers and alfalfas in the spring when we do corn and beans. And as soon as that's over, you're basically just moving right into, okay, now all of our smaller food plots. And for here now, I got like 103 different food plots. So it's a big undertaking, so you basically got to start, you're done planting and everything, hope to finish up in June. Sometime by July, we're starting to, okay, we've got to get it fertilized and soil samples and start disking these up and getting them ready. We're not planting them until like the end of July, but it takes that long to get fertilized and limed if it needs to, and soil samples and all that kind of stuff. And then by the time we're done planting those into August, bang, it's like, here we are, supposed to leave tomorrow for Utah, and still try to figure out if we got everything done and finishing up little things and making sure that everything is set. And then we still have all of our wheat and our clover fields. We're going to plant our fall clover plots. So I still have 20 so fields.
Wow.
That around September 1st, I still have to get in clover and wheat. And so that's why normally I wouldn't even come home, but this year I'm just going to come home we'll leave tomorrow and come home on September 1st, make sure all those fields get done, and then head back out to Montana for elk. But you put, that's a full-time job in itself, but then that's not even taking into account the TV show. But now you've got 30 different sponsors with contracts and all that kind of stuff. You got to do that, and social media stuff, and then we homeschool our kids, so you got that job thrown in there with teacher and principal and everything else. And you feel like you got 3 full-time jobs. You're going constantly, and it's more work than you'd ever do in any other job. But when you love it, doesn't seem like work so much. It's like, I get up every day at 4:30 and, with no alarm, just get up to go start doing stuff. This morning, just working on my bows down in our shop and getting arrows all ready and broadheads tuned and all that kind of stuff. But, when I was a chemical engineer, I hitting snooze 3 times before you got up. I don't even have to have an alarm, but I'm up before the sunrise here because I'm excited to get going and doing stuff. So it's, it's a blessing in that way for sure.
That's when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, for sure.
How do you?
But it's a ton of work. It's a ton.
Oh, absolutely, man. I mean, how have y'all been able to balance all of this with family? How have y'all just been able to balance family and life with all of this?
Well, I think a good part of it is that, a lot of it's right here at our home, our farm's right here, and our kids are with us all the time. So all summer and even, when you're doing homeschool, and pretend they're small in kindergarten and first grade, you get that stuff done in, 2 to 3 hours. And then they're out on tractors and they go on nature hikes and going looking, identifying different leaves and stuff. So they're always with us and doing stuff too, which is really nice. It'd probably be easier if they were in school, give you all day to go do stuff, but we didn't really want to do that. We don't want somebody else, raising our kids basically. So, or teaching them at this point, if they want to go to school later, but right now it's like, now we're just going to do it here. And then that allows us to go on the road and everything else and just bring their school with them, that we don't have to, fight that battle when they're in school and trying to go on hunting trips. We want them with us all the time. We never go on trips without them. I mean, I'll go do a couple of hunting trips. Like if I go to the Yukon or sheep hunt or a cat hunt or something where Tiffany doesn't go, stays home with the kids. But anything else, they always come with us. We never go someplace without them.
Man, I need to figure out how to get that lined up for myself.
Yeah, it's not that easy, all the time, but we just have it was easy when Tiffany's mom Linda was alive because she just came with us everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
and it was easy. There's no one that you trust more or anything than Grandma being there with the kids. But when she passed away, that was a huge shock to us and everything. And we're just finally now, after how long it's been, 3 years, starting to get a routine back where we're starting to feel comfortable with. We got a girl down here, Maddie, who's become just a good friend of ours and comes with us and babysits. The kids love her and she's great with the kids. And then even the guys, our camera guys and guys that work for us around here, they're like, second dads to the kids. They just love them and they take them out and doing stuff. So, it takes our whole, they would say it takes a village, takes our whole family here, including our cameramen and production family and everything around to make it all work. So certainly don't do it alone.
That's a tribe, man. That's an awesome tribe you got.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and it's not that many of us. I got just two full-time guys that work with me, helping farming and doing all that stuff. And when we're gone hunting, to keep everything here, checking cameras and mowing clovers and making sure there's no disasters, happening as we get home. Like last year with army worms and stuff. Now, if I didn't have somebody here, we would have gotten back and we wouldn't have had a field left. You need somebody always looking and catching stuff and get out there to spray it and take care of problems as they come up, or you just don't know. Neighbors' cows could get into stuff and destroy everything you worked for the whole year. So you got, you have to have guys around too when we're not. So we have like 2 part-time, and then Big George has been with us for 20 years. He's kind of part-time. And then just our camera guys that are, in and out. But for the most part, there's, 2 or 3 people here besides us, doing it. But there's a team of probably about 10 people that rotate in and out for camera work and production and stuff like that. So, but everybody, I mean, we just kind of developed a pretty good team that, it worked pretty seamlessly now.
Heck yeah. That's what you need to keep an awesome operation going like that. So
yeah.
What I want to do next is I want to talk deer hunting. That's what we're all here for, right? And so
I've never done anything like that.
No.
That'd be a new that's all I do every day. That's great.
I've heard that you like deer hunting, right? You're just slightly obsessed, or is that an understatement?
That's understatement for sure. I wake up every morning thinking what I can do for deer, and it's about, other if we're not talking deer, I don't have much to talk about.
Well, I know there's lots of guys out there that are like, man, my wife is getting sick and tired of me talking about deer hunting, and it's only August. I mean, how did you get Tiffany to make that shift?
I don't know, Tiffany. How did I get you to make that shift? It was funny when I just said that. Tiffany's like, "Isn't that the truth?" I hear her upstairs.
Uh-oh.
No, you just know you've met the right person when they, it's just interested in it as well, and never hunted when we met, but it was just, once she did, she was hooked just like most people are when they get out and start doing it. It was just something that we did together for so many years. And it was something fun to look forward to every year. And, and she just enjoys it as much as I do. She's probably not as obsessed with all the nuts and bolts of it, but when it comes to the hunting part, she just loves it as much as I do.
That's pretty special when you can find somebody that loves it just as much as you do. I mean, I was kind of in the same boat. I met my wife, and we dated for a little while, got engaged pretty quick, and as soon as we started hunting together, now we're 4 or 5 years into it. We got a 2-year-old, and she's asking me, so who's going to get to go hunting first this year?
Yep. So you need babysitters.
Yes, we've got those.
Grandparents.
Yes, we've got those, and so we'll be able to share time this year. And so I want to talk to you about your approach to growing big deer.
Mm-hmm.
I want to pick your mind. You started years and years ago, getting under the Kiskies and everything. And so how has your approach changed, and your thought and method behind it changed since starting then to where you are now?
Well, I think the number one, I mean, there's lots of little things that you are doing all the time, but the biggest thing is age on them. It used to be, where you thought a 4-year-old was mature. And basically, I guess if you're looking at it as, yeah, they are mature, but it would be like an 18-year-old, person,
Mm-hmm.
but, not a 60-year-old, and so we still shot a lot of 3-year-olds, even back 20 years ago. And then there was a lot of big ones. I mean, you were shooting, 160-inch deer that were, likely 3-year-olds.
Yeah.
And then you're kind of like, okay, we're just going to shoot nothing but 4-year-olds because that's when they're mature. And then, you realize, boy, there's still a lot of growing to do at 4. Okay, now kind of got to everything to be 5, and now we're kind of getting to everything at 6. But every deer is so individual, but we're seeing some of our biggest jumps like at 7 and and 6, and not necessarily at 5. So I think part of it is nutrition and all that, and biggest is just keeping them alive long enough. I mean, let's face it, I think if you took the average age of a whitetail buck in the United States, it's probably 3 years old. To try to get them to 6 and 7, you're taking a big risk, and that's just, you can't do when, let's say for me, 25 years ago, which would probably be like the average person. Hey, you got maybe have a place or two to hunt, or maybe you don't. Or like for me, I went and knocked on doors and hunted a lot of public stuff or something like that, and you haven't shot a whole bunch of big whitetails. You get 150 deer walking by, 130 for that matter. You're not passing them up.
Yeah.
But it's just, it's just like anything else. As you shoot some, okay, now I want something bigger. Okay, now I want something bigger and something bigger. So it makes it easier to pass deer that are, might be 170 or 180 inches even, saying, well, they're 5 and they're mature and they're huge. But you know what, let's just let him go and see what he does next year. That takes a lot of, it takes a lot of willpower to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's just through, having a lot of opportunities. Just being lucky enough to live in Iowa, being lucky enough to have farms that we can manage, being lucky enough to have a job that we can hunt every single day and spend every day in the summer, preparing for that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, it's not a reality to most people. And that's like for us, it's, we can do it. And, that's probably, cool to see. Like on the show, you see so many good bucks, but it's through a lot of, willpower and a lot of work that most people can't. I realize that, so I don't expect other people, even when neighbors, might shoot you when you're giant 4-year-olds, you're like, hey, I don't blame them. Congratulations. I mean, I would in your shoes too. So you don't,
yeah,
it's frustrating at times when you lose a good one that you think could really have great potential, but I get it. I was there myself. I mean, I was in my 30s before I had the first farm. I mean, when I was, 20 and 25, I was just knocking on doors and trying to, find a place and hunting public and everything. I've been there. There's nothing, I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth where I had great hunting properties and any of that. Grew up right in the city. I could see the IDS tower from my house. My neighbors were 10 feet away from me. Didn't have any relatives that had any land, no farmers, no anything. So, it's the way I grew up, never dreaming that I would have my own hunting, even a piece of hunting land, let alone, several pieces in different states and things like that. So I totally get it, but that's really what it takes. I mean, you can get lucky and shoot a big one once in your life or twice, maybe even, if you have a decent spot. But if you want to shoot, 1 to 3 giant deer and 170 to 200 every year, it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take a lot of risk leaving some deer go that you may never see again.
All right, y'all, we're going to interrupt this podcast real quick for a quick word from our sponsors. The HuntStand podcast is brought to you by Bowtech Archery. Refuse to follow. If you're in the market for a new bow this fall, make sure you check out Bowtech and the easy tuning capabilities of the Deadlock system. I've been shooting the SR350 this year, and tuning that thing has been so easy. Don't have to worry about twisting strings or doing any of that razz and jazz. So if that's what you're looking for, make sure you check out Bowtech Archery today. Up next, we got Lacrosse boots and their Navigator series. The world is raw, rugged, and relentless. Navigate it accordingly. The Navigator series is born to take your hunt further. Check out the comfortable and versatile line of lace-up hunting boots from Lacrosse today. Up next, we got Federal Premium. Go beyond what you ever thought possible with their lineup of terminal ascent ammunition. I've been using this ammo this year so far, and it has worked phenomenally for me. From Predators all the way up to a beautiful Hill Country, Texas Axis buck. It worked amazingly. One shot, that buck didn't go anywhere, about 250 yards. That buck dropped right in his tracks. Literally didn't have to do any tracking. So if you're in the market for some new ammunition, check out Federal Premium and their lineup of Terminal Ascent. The HuntStand podcast is also brought to you by Lacrosse's lineup of the Alpha Burley Pro boot. Stock, hunt, repeat. Up next, we got Browning, the best there is. I'll be using their new lineup of Ovix gear this fall, so I'm really excited to check that out and just get to use it this fall all the way from the Whitetail Woods up into the mountains chasing elk. And finally, we got Worksharp, the knife sharpening company. I use their MK2 knife sharpener on every knife in my house, in the kitchen, in my pack. It makes sharpening your knives a breeze. My wife even loves to use this thing. It makes everything super easy. So if that's what you're looking for, make sure you check out Worksharp today. All right, y'all, we're going to get back to this episode of the HuntStand podcast. Yeah, man, the mindset to do that is, that's a different ball game. Because, I mean, like down here in Texas where I'm at, you know, we're hunting low fence. And if you see a 130, 135, 140 3-year-old, I mean, it's kind of unheard of in Central Texas. And so if you don't shoot him, more than likely your neighbors will.
Right. And that's the thing you got to get in your head is if you don't, you're the neighbor you're talking about.
Exactly.
So you hear everybody and they're kind of like, you know, dogging on their neighbors. My neighbor is going to shoot a deer on. Well, you're the neighbor you're talking about. If that bothers you, you know, then you're the neighbor you're talking about. Mm-hmm. So you just got to do it. Because I always figure, hey, if I let 5 deer go and I get one to make it through, at least I got one big one to hunt next year. And if I don't, I got 0 to hunt next year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and I get it. I mean, I can say that because I'm in a good situation where I got lots of deer and lots of farms and stuff like that. But I realized if I wasn't, you could never say that. I mean, you see a big one, you know, you're shooting, you know, what's big to you, but what's big to people. But it's like, you know, is all different. It's all relative. But, you know, for me, once you've shot a lot of big ones, it makes it a lot easier to shoot the next one. So I think that's the one thing I kind of try to talk to your neighbors about and stuff. Okay, you know, we don't have to, you know, if you're going to shoot another 2-year-old and cut the horns off and throw it on the wood pile, what's the sense? Maybe, you know, if it's not older or bigger than anything you've already shot a bunch of, let's leave those and shoot a doe this year if you can't, or something like that, you know, just, but like for me, it's really helped. Like a lot of my neighbors, you know, maybe shot smaller ones just like I did. I mean, when I moved here, I shot 3-year-olds too. I mean, I can't say anything negative about any neighbor that shoots a deer. I mean, I can be, you know, disappointed about it that would have been a giant in another year or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I would never say that to them. I mean, because it's like, hey, to them, it's just congratulations. I mean, I would have done it too in a year or two. So, you know, you don't want to act like, you know, you're better than they are because you can pass them. It's like, I would have never in their position either. But you just like talk to those neighbors, and once they've shot a good one, you know, it may be one of those big ones that I was watching that would have been, you know, that I had potential to go to 200. It might have been like a 180, but it was a young one that just had stickers. And to get a deer to 200, they're just genetically, they're like 1 in a million. So if you shoot them before they reach their potential, that's just like, well, it could be 5 years until you get another one. But so it's nice if you have a neighbor that's a friend or whatever you can talk to, and once they shoot a good one, say, okay, now that you shot a nice deer like that, next year let's pass on those, and let's try to get one bigger than that or something, But it's just same. It was the same for me. It was a progression. It wasn't like, hey, you came out of the womb shooting 200s. It's like, hey, I shot a lot of spikies and does and button bucks, and I got my whole share of them. But it wasn't like after I shot the first 20 bucks that I was just going to keep shooting forkies to cut the horns off and throw them on the wood pile. Like I said, I wanted something bigger, and then once you get something bigger, I want something older, and so there's a progression. So you just try to help neighbors get to that point.
Yeah,
and that's about all you can do.
It's where it pays off to go have a couple beers or sit down and have dinner with your neighbors.
Yeah, I mean, to talk to them. I have, some neighbors I got great relationships, and we do that. And other ones I don't even know, because they let people hunt there, and you don't even know who they are or anything like that. And it's just like, hey, you lose deer disappear, and you assume they got shot, and that's fine. I mean, they keep making more. So
yeah, absolutely.
yeah. They shoot that one. Well, wait, we'll get another one eventually. But it does hurt on some of the ones that you just see that have that potential to be a 200 because they're so rare.
Exactly.
Let's face it, even in the best areas, like, say you live in Iowa and, managed farms and everything, still 80% of your deer are going to be 8 points that are going to be never going to be anything. And, the 20 or 30% that might be even 10s, there's such a small percentage of them that'll even be good 10s. And then a percentage of that to get one that has, stickers and junk and enough stuff to go to 200. I mean, it's a very small, number that can do it. So when you lose one of those, it's like, it might be 5 years to even see another one that has that kind of potential.
Yeah.
Recognizing that, and just for me, I mean, so how does it, how has it changed? It's recognizing that potential, and they don't always do it. Sometimes at 3, you think someone has a really good potential, and that's almost their best rack they have. But for the most part, you can kind of recognize the ones that have the potential. We give it even at like 2 and 3 for sure. You recognize those ones and try to protect those. So we'll, a lot of times, and if there's other big bully 8s and stuff around, we make sure we take out those management deer, but still never until they're 5.
Yeah.
Even I don't care how poor genetic it is, never till they're 5. Always give them to that anyway.
Yeah, because you never know. They could, you could have a little bit of what you consider a management type deer that he's at 3 years old, and you look at him, it's like, oh man, I really need to get him out of the herd. But the thing is, you let him go another year, he could completely change.
Yes. Well, there's like most of our, all of my buddies and people that come and hunt here. I mean, I was telling them, it's like, well, if you drew a tag in Iowa and your goal is to shoot, a 200-inch deer, you probably don't want to come and hunt with me, because if I have one, which is very rare that we even have one. I mean, Tiffany or I or Tom or my other buddies that own land are gonna hunt him, likely not you.
Yeah.
So, but we have lots of good management deer, but our management deer will be in the 50s and 60s. And most people, 160, and sometimes they might even hit 170, is a deer of a lifetime for them. So most of them always still want to hunt here,
Yeah.
But that's what you're saying. You look at these 8 points sometimes at 3, and if somebody shot it, if you let somebody shoot that, likely they just cut the horns off and make a hat rack or something. But a lot of those bucks, as I even look around, I'm sitting in a living room here that we just put up a ton of I've started putting heads up in here. We just moved into our new house. There's a lot of 8 points and stuff on here that, people, if you went by that mentality, they certainly wouldn't be on my wall in here. And because there's some of these 8 points turned into giant 8 points. There's stickers and kickers and cool stuff at, 5 and 6 that, I'm just looking right now, some of my best ones, the deer in here that you would catch your eye first, and the giant frame ones are 8 points or 9 points, something really cool. And so if you shoot an 8 point at 3 and you cut the horns off and nail it to your garage wall, or you wait till they're 5 or 6 and you have to shoot them, it's a big thing. It's got a giant head like a cinder block and huge mass, and 150 inch 8-points down. Every one of them is on their wall. So still they are, trophies. So there is no management deer at 3.
Man. So I kind of want to talk to you next, looking at a piece of property. I know there's lots of guys out there that they've either just acquired a new lease that they can do a lot to, or they just bought a new piece of property. And so I kind of want to pick your mind a little bit on when you get that new piece of property, how it kind of give us like a generic, not necessarily generic, but kind of give us like the overall Lee mindset on how he's going to look at that new piece of property to develop food, shelter, water, and make sure that those does are staying in there for big bucks. Like where are you starting and where are you going at from there?
Okay. Yeah, that's a good question, because it's, every piece of property is like a new canvas. I actually started working with some friends of mine, Toby Stay and Bobby Kendall, the company called the Whitetail Group that they had started a while ago, just developing farms and selling them. And that's, I've had a lot of people talking about like real estate. You should go into real estate, and I don't really have it. Like I said, I already got 2 and 3 full-time jobs as is already. I don't want to use another one. But what I love, the part that I love is taking that canvas of a farm and say, okay, how can I develop this for whitetails? And that's the part that I love about it. That's why I joined those guys, because that's what I like doing. And then once it's done, yeah, you love hunting it, but I have my own farms to hunt. I sell that to somebody else, and it's a, boom, turnkey piece for them.
Yeah.
But so, every place has its good quality. It doesn't matter if it's wide open. I mean, if it was something that was all field, so you can look and say, okay, well, there's a good, now I can have all the food plots I want. I can have big ones. I can have small ones. I can do whatever I want. I can put giant stand of CRP in the middle, or I want to keep them and put food plots in there. And I can put, there's something you can do with every piece. But the number one thing is food for me, and then number 2 is cover. I mean, they're very close. You have to have both. You can't have one without the other, really.
Yeah.
And if you don't even have trees, you can make that cover with, tall CRP and things like that. So, there's no such thing as a piece of property that's, isn't going to hold deer in it. So the first thing I look for, number 1, is food. And that's like, when I first started hunting and stuff down here, I was looking for something that had the most timber, because you thought, it's going to hold the most deer. But you find that it might hold them, but if your neighbors have all the food, you're going to lose every one of them to them. So, and it's not just, most people think it's like food plots for deer is like an acre, 2 acre, a quarter acre thing. And we have those for sure, and like for kill plots, but I always found my destination fields. I got to have something that's at least, 10 to 20 acres. I mean, big, and which most people think that, oh my gosh, our food plot is 20 something acres. But you almost have to have a big one like that. And maybe not initially, maybe not in the first years that you have one. Maybe you could harvest some of it, but it doesn't take too many years, like at least here in the Midwest, where you get to late season and all of a sudden there's 200 deer in there, because that's the only food left, and that's how you just keep recruiting, more and more deer, is with that food. So I always make sure I have one field that can I get something in that's 10 to 20, and then also little, smaller ones that might be 3 to 5 or something like that. Because on every farm, I want to make sure I have a big field of corn and beans. And, beans, if it's not 5 acres, at least for me, I don't even bother, because here, wipe it out. You'll never get a pod on it. So, I'll put them in beans sometimes just as a placeholder and let them eat them, and then put them into brassicas later. But I make sure that we have big enough pieces for corn or beans, and then enough smaller ones too, that I can have a variety of everything. So I want to have, clover fields. I want to have wheat fields. I want to have brassica fields. I want to have grain fields on every farm, just to make sure that any time of the year that I've got food for them. Food is key. Just like fishing, you don't go fishing without bait. You have to have something to attract them. And then the next part is the cover, having the cover to hold them. So a lot of our timber, if it's got timber, okay, we go in and hinge cut it and select cut sometimes now. I've been learning more about that. The the timber side of it and burning through the timber to get rid of like our multiflora rows and things like that. So then to really start working on the timber on a lot of our farms now too, and just to get the most cover and even food and stuff out of, the browse and things in inside the cover. And then also, a lot of places with just the switch grasses and big blue stem and stuff, and getting tall, grasses too, because in the wintertime they just love to lay in that, what's good thermal cover. In the winter where they get sun still comes in there on them, and it's just finding so many sheds and stuff on when we've been working on some of our, our fields like that. You can realize how many of them are laying out in that, and using that in the wintertime, and especially next to food sources. So, those are the things that I start with is obviously food and cover. And most of our stuff here, like where we are in Iowa, most people think of it as flat, but there's nothing flat about where we live. We're kind of between the Des Moines and Mississippi rivers, so it's a lot of ditchy, creeks and runoff stuff. So, there's plenty of water, but we still, in all those, take advantage of a lot of those ravines and hills and stuff like that to put in ponds and make them some in the timber and stuff that they use during the rut. And a lot of times those bigger bucks, they use that water in the timber rather than on creeks or bigger stuff. They still stay hidden. And, over the years, you learn where their, the main bedding areas are. So you kind of put them real close to that they get up and hit those water sources, early season and stuff. So you're concentrating on the things that most people talk about, the food, cover, and water. Yeah. You have to have all those. But I think that's one thing that people don't realize, how easy it is to improve your property. Because I know I was that way. When you had when I first started, I was like, man, I could probably get a little food plot in here, and I could probably do this, and that's what we did. And then I just realized, like, we have a place called Nichols Equipment down here, and they have one, anywhere if you live in southern Iowa. They have one in Des Moines and Ottumwa, so they'll deliver anything to you. It's like even like dozers and stuff, people are intimidated by it, but once they start using them, and, I start with all my skid loaders and stuff like that, and then you get into dozers and excavators. They're really easy to run, and you can just rent them. And like the amount of work that you can do in a day as far as building ponds or putting in a food plot. I got this little clearing. Okay, I'm going to make this little 1/4 acre thing into a 5-acre field or a 3-acre field, something that's substantial. That's going to be, actually hold some food and be able to hold deer in there. It's literally like 2 days worth of work and cost you a few $100. And you're looking at that and it's like, man, I spent money on this farm and spent all this time, trying to make it better. And I didn't realize for $1,000, I could really change this thing.
Yeah.
You don't have to own that equipment. You can rent it. And I think a lot of people are intimidated by running it. I don't, I said most people can't just have never been in one, just hop in a dozer and start using it. So, but, you always can hire somebody, and really for most of the things we do, people might be charging $100 an hour or something like that, in 2 days they can do it, might cost you a couple $1,000, but in the big scheme of things, if you pay $200 to $2 million on a farm, is a couple $1,000. Is it really gonna break you for how much better you're gonna make your farm on those little things? And those are the kind of things that we really do a lot of, putting in food plots and dozing and excavator work and stuff like that. And I have a dozer now, but I don't have a lot of the other stuff, and I just rent them from these places. And you don't have to own them. I just have enough work to do with roads and stuff like that it justifies owning one. But the amount of stuff the improvements you can make are huge that a lot of people don't do. I mean, they just don't think about it. They just, think it's beyond their scope of getting in a dozer and putting in a food plot. But it's very simple and quick how fast you can do those. Even if you have to hire somebody else to do it for a couple $1,000, you can make your farm into an incredible farm from an average farm.
It's kind of funny that you're talking about renting equipment, because I myself never actually thought about that, and I don't know why, because where we hunt, some of the tractors got too old, and it's my wife's godmother's place, and so she sold off a lot of the equipment. And I think a lot of guys look at it too, like, man, I just can't afford a $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 tractor and all this equipment.
Mm-hmm.
You make a really good point there that it's definitely making my head turn now. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, never thought about that.
Exactly. And I never did either, and most people don't. And until I started, this was my job. I started thinking about it. Looking at farms. God, I got this big timber piece. And it's awesome. There's tons of deer in there, but all the deer, they all go out to the egg crops out there, and the neighbors, and there's this, I can't keep one past 3 years old. And you start looking at it, and it's like, well, this is, it probably, was a pasture at one point. Now it's just overgrown. I don't have to take a bunch of big trees out of here. This is all kind of more like cedars and brushy stuff here. I'm going to go rent a dozer, and it was awesome. You got these big food plots in there, and your deer never have to leave.
Yeah.
They're spending 99% of their life on your farm. And it's like, that's where you need to get to. And it's way easier than people think. And, one good example, I've talked about this a lot of times, but we have a farm that we had a farm that was like 400 acres.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had a guy from Wisconsin had a 60-acre piece next to us, and these other guys that had an 80. And his name was Alan that had the 60. And right in the middle of that 60-acre piece, there was like a 13-acre field in there, and he had just in CRP. And like Tiffany and I would walk down it because there was like a road that goes along between the two of our farms, but it was an old county road that was fenced. It was gated on both sides. We had access to it, but it wasn't a public road anymore. So we would use that to go in and out, and so would they and stuff. And every time Tiffany and I would walk by that, I'd go, God, Alan could kill us if he put food in that thing, because it's right in the middle of the timber. I mean, it's awesome. We have a field like that on ours, and that's what makes that farm so awesome. We have like a 20-acre field right in the middle of the timber. It's a long, skinny one, and so we have that whole thing, and corn every year, or beans, and then put the edges in turnips or something. It's like our best field. I said, man, Alan could be killing us on that thing if he did that. So, and eventually, Alan was like, I'm selling this. He goes, I see all the deer you guys shoot on your show and big ones. And he goes, I've had pictures of them occasionally, but I never shoot them. All I ever seem to be able to shoot is 130-inch 8-points or, young ones. And it's like, goes back to, yeah, I mean, look, you're right next to it. You see what we're shooting in, but you're still shooting the 130-inch 8-point.
Mm-hmm.
But, where it likely if he waited long enough, but he was from out of state and he wasn't there and he didn't get tagged every year. So there's all that thing too. But so finally he's like, I can't get any deer over here. So he's going to sell it. So we bought it. And so the first thing we did was buy out the CRP. So, I mean, for them, so many people have this income thing in their mind. Like, okay, however much you spent, let's say you spent, $300,000 on that piece.
Yeah.
And really the CRP that's in 13 acres, okay, you made $1,000. So you had to have that $1,000, but in the meantime, you spent, let's say whatever, $300,000 on a place to hunt for $1,300. Is it worth not having a place to a good hunting spot? So the first thing we did was buy it out, and we put that whole thing in food plots. And like that year, we had every single buck and deer that we had seen and never seen on our other farm in there.
Really?
It was crazy. And so I'm sure, Alan, if you're out there listening, I'm sure he's probably heard me talk about it before. He's talked about this in seminars and on the show and everything else. And you can see from the show, I shot a 222, my biggest buck ever 2 years ago on that 13-acre field. We shot about, if we're going to shoot one, it's going to be on that field or on our big field.
Yeah.
And our biggest deer are normally on that. We call it the Allen field. And it's the best farm that we have. And basically all because he wanted to make the $1,300 of income every year instead of putting it into food a big food plot that you can hold deer in there. And we do the edges of it like in clover and wheat and then corn or beans in the middle. So it doesn't matter if it's early season, corn is still standing. You got this wheat that's just growing, beautiful green are coming to it, or it's big enough field that we can split it up into different things. And then we just mow that corn down here And so you have all that food for sheds, and it lasts right through. It's a big enough field that you mow it all down. That corn or beans, just leave them there. I mean, it's food for them all the way into shed season, basically. So you find your sheds there, and then turkeys and everything else. And it's really like, for that $1,300 that people say, oh, I need income on this to help pay for taxes. Well, okay. In the meantime, what you spent your investment on, it's not producing anything for you for $1,300. But now I look at it as, what's that farm worth? Okay, we bought it for whatever, $3,000 an acre. I wouldn't dream of selling it for under $6,000 or $7,000.
Yeah,
I wouldn't even, if somebody even offered me $7,000, you wouldn't even think about it. But just think that, was that $1,300 really worth it for what it's worth as a farm property for resale or for yourself? And obviously anytime you want to sell something, it's like, okay, well, what'd you shoot on? Well, here's a 220 that I shot here. Here's a 187 that was shot the year before. Here's Tiffany's 8-point that was 178 that was shot here the year before. You're like, okay, how much do you want for it? So those are just the little things that you learn over the years that I don't worry about the income part of it, because just the value of the property overall is going to far just out trump the income value you're going to get off it. And of course, it's nice to have, if you have some that have big ag fields on them, some that you can get some income farming them yourself or renting them out. That was nice to have, but don't compromise your hunting because of it.
Yeah.
I always think hunting first. Okay, now that's too much. There's 200 acres of tillable on here. Okay, I even 200 deer every night. 20 acres they can clean up and have all eaten by shed season and before green up. But, that's about it. That's for me here. I kind of figured that 17 to 20 is about what we need on per farm to not run out in December and not be bunch left in there for all this regrowth corn coming up in your next year and everything. They clean it up pretty good by the time, after shed season, get to March and start maybe getting towards green up and start thinking about fertilizing and planting for the next year. There's zero left in it.
Yeah.
So that's, we have to have, that's what I think, we have to have those fields that are 13 to 17 to 20 or something on every farm. And if they're not there, then we make them.
Gotcha.
So that's one thing I say. If it doesn't have potential to have like at least 10 or 12 acre field in there, then I'd be a little concerned about it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, man, I love getting to talk about deer hunting. I love everything we've talked about today, and I know we're running out of time here. And so, before we go, I kind of want you to give some parting advice to the listeners. That what would you tell that young guy or gal that is looking to take that chance on themselves, kind of like you did years ago, leaving the engineering job? They're transforming their lives. They want to make a change, and they want to take a chance on themselves, and they want to follow a path, or they want to go down a path in the outdoor industry. Or they just want to take a chance. What would you have to say to that person?
Well, you get that question a lot, and there's probably, well, if it's a passion, you just have to follow it, but it has to be that first. I always say, like, hey, yeah, I want a gold toilet too, but I'm not going to work real hard to get one. So if it's really your passion, it'll lead you that way anyway. But number one for me, I would try to encourage kids just to, be, here's more than shooting a big deer or anything like that. People want a good, solid person. I always try to be a good Christian. I always help anybody. I give people the shirt off my back if they ask for it.
Yeah.
And I think that goes way farther than people give it credit for, because, you look at, I think Michael was a great example back, when I first met Waddell. He was a camera guy, but just such a good guy, and, fun and everything else. And look how was the hugest star in the hunting industry.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, and now he shot some big deer, but back then, at the time of the road trip days stuff, I don't think he'd even shot like a 140. And people are, in the meantime, you got people out poaching and stuff, trying to, showed themselves with this big deer and stuff. And what did that do for you? Nothing. I mean,
Nothing.
Michael never had even shot a 140 back in those days, but he was just a good person, and and fun to be around and everything else. You didn't have to do that, but so a lot of it is just working hard and being a good person. I always look at it as like, why do these things keep happen to us? Seem like how did this just fall into our lap? But I think that for me, I was thinking I always try to be good to everybody, and it comes back tenfold on you. And so just remember that. Just stay honest, stay true, just work hard. And it's hard to find. I mean, now owning a business, just trying to find somebody that'll work, and that something to show up every day. Where things like your grandparents, you look at it, I mean, that would have never been a problem back in those days. I mean, everybody was dying to try to find a job or something. And now it just seems like it's just so hard to find somebody. So if you're a younger person, if you're just willing to show up every day and work, and it's not hard when it's your passion, like you said, for me, this is not like a job. I work every single day because I love it. If you really have that, you won't have any problems, because just finding somebody that they'll come to work every day. But if you're excited about it and work hard, you always hear that. But there's so much about it is, just, I think the people that are honest and show up every day and with a smile on their face, they're going to get a job wherever they want to. And I think in this industry, it's the same as any industry. And, that's going to go a heck of a lot farther than what kind of deer you shoot.
Absolutely. Man, that's good advice and great words to live by and great things to think about. So, man, Lee, really appreciate you hopping on the HuntStand podcast with us this morning and talking deer hunting and talking life.
You bet. Anytime. Like I said, if it's not on a podcast, anything else, or Tiffany and I, our camera guys and I, we're talking deer every day. And as you can see, we could sit here and talk all day. We could talk till tonight about deer. It never gets old. So anytime, I'm glad to come on and talk with you anytime.
Absolutely, man. I love it. All right, y'all, there you have it. We had Lee on here. We just want to thank him for his time to hop on here. He's got a busy schedule. They're fixing to leave to go out west, chase after some mule deer, chase after some elk, have some fun. So we just want to thank him for taking the time out of his busy as heck schedule to talk deer with us. I know he loves talking deer, and so just getting to do that with him, ton of fun. And hopefully y'all were able to take something from this. And if you're trying to grow big deer yourself, maybe you'll apply something from this yourself. Apply it to your game plan from what Lee talked about, and maybe you'll get some big giants walking around your farm one of these days soon. So again, y'all, thank you for the support. We really appreciate y'all tuning into the HuntStand podcast. If this is the first time for you, make sure you rate, review, and make sure you subscribe or follow the podcast. It really helps us out. We appreciate it, y'all. And again, we'll see y'all on the next one.